Welcome to my simple shop cart build. In this video I wanted to continue my organizational theme and build something that will hold the tools that I use on just about every project. I went with an open concept design and made a series of 4 shallow shelves that are held together with 3 uprights. The shelves are built with 2x4 material and some crappy 1/2-inch plywood for the base, and they're affixed to the uprights with 1/4x20 bolts that are screwed into inserts, and this allows you to move the shelves up and down. I may at some point add some dividers on the top just to organize things a little bit better, but for the most part this is kind of how I use things. Is I like to have them spread out so I can see everything and just grab what I want, and as long as I put it back where it goes in the general area, then I always know where it is. So if you're interested in a simple shop cart with open storage design, and who isn't, hope you'll stick around because that's what I'm building today. When I'm making furniture out of 2x4s, I like to surface the faces and clean up the edges so I have nice clean lines for marking and cutting. I'm using my planer to bring the boards to 1.25 inches thick and my table saw to clean up the edges. I'm going to pick the 4 straightest boards. I need 3 for the uprights and I'll save 1, and I'm going to go ahead and rip those down to the final dimension. So my cart is made up of 4 shelves. Each of the shelves is going to be 21.5 inches by 25 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and just set up some stops on my miter saw and cut those pieces out. I cut the 1/2-inch sheet of plywood on my table saw to the correct width. I just need to cut this to length now, and I'm going to go ahead and use my track saw to do that. Now I'm just going to get started by taking the factory edge off and making sure that this edge here is perpendicular to this edge here. I have to cut 4 of these shelves, so I'm using my DIY parallel guides to keep track of the length. Measure once, and then rely on a positive stop. Now that I have all the parts cut for the shelves, I need to do a little bit of work to get them ready for assembly. I'm going to cut rebates in the side rails for a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood. That'll be the bottom. And I'm also going to drill some holes in the sides, in the front, and this is where the rails will attach. So I'm using these threaded inserts and 1/4x20 bolts. I'm going to use a little piece of scrap 3/4 inch plywood, and that's going to dictate where the holes get drilled for the inserts. So I have one here. I'm using a block, and then that will align in the middle of the front one, and then obviously on this side just flip it around, and that will ensure that across all of the shelves the holes will be in exactly the same place. The last thing I'll do before I assemble them is cut rebates for the uprights, and those will be around the same location of where the holes are. I'm using the rebates for alignment, but also to prevent any racking once this whole thing is assembled. So these shelves are going to be very shallow. They're going to be 1.5 inches off of the bottom. So while I have my Dados deck in, I'm going to go ahead and cut the rebates for the uprights in the rails, and This is just a scrap piece that I'm going to use to make sure that I can get the alignment right on the edge and also the depth of the cut right. This needs to be only a quarter of an inch. So the rebates for the shelves were 1/2 inch, and these are going to be a quarter of an inch. So I'm using the same piece of scrap that I used when I drilled all the holes in the rails and made sure that they all aligned correctly to drill the holes in the uprights. And since I don't know exactly where I want the middle shelves to go, I'm just going to put a shelf on the top and a shelf on the bottom. I can assemble the cart and then figure out exactly where I want those other 2 shelves to be. After I get the insert flush with the face, I can take it back out and use some epoxy or super glue just to make sure that it doesn't rotate. Now that all the inserts are dry, I can go ahead and assemble the shelves, and to do that I'm using some Titebond 3 wood glue, 2.5 inch exterior grade wood screws. Now I did pre-drill and countersink these holes. I used a 1/8 inch drill bit for that. Now I did dry assemble this and everything fit together really well. However, once I add glue, that's when everything usually goes to crap, and for that I have a couple of clamps that'll help, and then I have the fine tuner that will ease things together if necessary. Now the one nice thing about the dogs is I can rely on making sure that the sides are flush with the dogs, and then I know that I'm getting a 90-degree angle. It's really hard to pull a tape and check your corners when you have clamps all over the place. So I like being able to just flush up against these 2 guys, and then once I've done that I know that I have a 90 right here, and I'm good with that. So now that the glue's dried, I can go ahead and add the runners to either end, and I'm just going to cut these to fit. I'm using these 2-inch POWERTEC casters, and they come with a locking caster that's on the back and then a swivel one for the front. I'm going to offset them 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and I'm using a number 10 by 1 inch wood screw with a washer to attach them. So I just realized I have to move the casters over a bit because I have the screws that are attaching the front to the side rails. So I'm going to move 1/2 an inch in that way. It's still 1/4 of an inch from the front and the back. So after cutting down the uprights to 39 inches, which I think is a really good height for this shop cart, I then added the other 2 shelves. Now these are 12 inches from the top of this one to the top of this one, and the same thing for this one. And then this one was just the difference left over, so it's about 12.5 inches. This height works out really well for me, and I think these shelves work out really well. The only thing left to do is to get this stood up and add my tools. is a good start. I'm not sure if this is exactly where everything's going to live, but I'm willing to go with this for a little while and make adjustments. I am able to get all my smaller clamps on here, which is really handy, and I can just take this to where I'm working and pull it up and have access to everything. Well, that'll wrap up my simple shop cart build video. I hope you found something useful, and you'll like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.